Let's talk about running backs that you should start or sit in week 16. And yes, you'll notice I am sitting down in my videos. Typically, I'm standing up. We're sitting down because it's time to get to business. All right, no more play time. It's the semifinals. Let's get these lineups set in the right way. A ton of injuries to talk about. We're going to talk through all 32 teams, 16 matchups in total, starting off with Thursday night football, Broncos at Chargers. And you'll notice on the graphic presented to you, it's all reds, meaning stop, pump the brakes. We do not have a clear start with your playoff hopes on the line. A lot of these guys are going to get you eliminated in my humble opinion, like Gus Edwards, who is currently splitting the backfield with Kamani Vidal. Gus Edwards hasn't had over 10 points this entire season. Okay? And that includes the last 3 or 4 weeks where J.K. Dobbins hasn't been involved. And we're also talking about a player who has had 2 touchdowns in the past 4 weeks, but again, still hasn't scored over 10 fantasy points this entire season. He has 2 targets on the year. This is just not a safe floor. I know it's a good matchup. I don't want to chase it. Last week, Kamani Vidal actually played 67% of the snaps. Now, that had a lot to do with game script, but I just don't trust it. On the opposite side, they're trying to use every single running back they can in Denver, right? Javante's getting some work. Jalil's getting some work. Audric Estime's getting some work. Honestly, if I showed up to the Denver facility, they might give me a couple snaps, all right? They might give me 3% of the snaps in Denver, and it's not even a good matchup. It's a bottom 5 matchup for your running backs. I don't trust it. I think these are 2 teams that are going to try and throw, and that's how they're going to try and beat each other. I just don't trust any running back. There's no reason to trust any of these running backs right now. All right, moving on. We've got some Saturday football. That's right. No college football this week. So the NFL decides, all right, let's put 2 games on a Saturday. The first game is Texans at Chiefs. Make sure you're setting your lineups a little bit earlier, right? Because obviously a day early for these 2 teams. 2 defenses, guys, that honestly are terrible matchups. There's a lot of negatives in this game. 2 defenses that are very tough. The Chiefs are the worst defense for your running back to face. The Texans are the second worst or third worst. And then you've got a low over-under. You've got a backfield in Kansas City that is currently kind of splitting opportunities. Yes, Isaiah Pacheco is getting most of the opportunities, but here's his snap share in the past 3 weeks. 37%, 46%, and then 37% again. We're still seeing a healthy dose of Kareem Hunt. In fact, Kareem Hunt last week had 15 touches, and Isaiah Pacheco had 14 touches. It's a split backfield. We don't know exactly when that's going to change. It's not a good matchup to go ahead and chase it. And we also don't even know if Patrick Mahomes is going to play. So the offense might not even be able to move the ball, right? Patrick Mahomes considered week to week with that high ankle sprain. So with Mahomes potentially not playing, I don't project him to play. I think it's a must sit across the board here. If Mahomes plays, then you can use Pacheco as a desperation spot start, but I would not be kind of relying on it. And then as far as Joe Mixon goes, he did leave the game and came back with that ankle injury. Now, this is according to D'Amico Ryans. He says Joe came out fine. Joe will be fine. Talking about his ankle getting checked on the sideline. He came back into the game and he finished the game. Now, we did see that again this year and then he missed some time. So that's a little bit concerning, but D'Amico Ryans, according to Coach Speak Index, has an 80% reliability rating. He did finish the game. So there are some positive signs for Joe Mixon. And if he plays, of course, I know it's a bad matchup, but keep in mind, this offense in Kansas City is probably not going to be able to move the ball. That's probably going to lead to more opportunities for Joe Mixon at the end of the game. And of course, if Joe Mixon isn't available, Dare Ogunbowale is a decent, break glass scenario. All right, the other game on Saturday night is Steelers at Ravens, a divisional matchup. Last time this game did not go as anticipated, and the Steelers kind of dominated, or at least they were up for the majority of the game, which really hurt Derrick Henry. I don't think that happens again this week. There's a chance George Pickens doesn't play. That Pittsburgh Steelers offense looked very, very lethargic last week. I think Derrick Henry is going to bounce back in a big way. And, you can make the case, well, last week versus the Giants, he should have had a good game because they were dominating. Well, the problem was they dominated so quickly that they just didn't need to use Derrick Henry. In fact, they actually used one of their rookie running backs for a while. They gave him some touches as well. They just didn't need to focus their attention on Derrick Henry in that game. I think this will be a much more competitive game. And the Steelers are also a top 5 matchup for your running back when you adjust for schedule. So I think Derrick Henry is primed to bounce back if you made it through last week with him busting. On the opposite side of the ball, you have two running backs that kind of back and forth. One has a solid 10-point game. The other one has a solid 10-point game, but they're kind of, cock blocking each other. It's not a good matchup. I think this could be a Jaylen Warren week if the Ravens are able to, at home, get up early. But I don't really trust these two names. I would say the only leagues I want to start them are in like your 14, 16 team leagues. Otherwise, I think it might be best to steer clear. That's my humble opinion. All right, moving on to the Sunday slate of games. Starting off with Giants at Falcons, 42.5-point over-under. This is the third largest spread of the week in favor of the Atlanta Falcons. Tyrone Tracy, I am going to label him a must-start. Look, it wasn't a good week last week. Let's be honest. It wasn't great. However, he still saw 68% of the snaps and had 14 total opportunities. Versus the Falcons, it's not as scary of a matchup as the Baltimore Ravens. So I feel fine going ahead and putting him into your lineup with that receiving upside that he has kind of as a safe floor. It was really confusing to see Devin Singletary get that touchdown, but I'm not going to overthink it. On the opposite side of the ball, of course, you're going to start Bijan Robinson, coming off a pretty, I'd say, mediocre week for him, 14 points, but he was still very efficient, averaging over 6 yards per carry. He just didn't get into the end zone. But yeah, we're definitely going to start him in a top 10 matchup against the New York Giants. All right, moving on to Patriots at Bills. This is the largest spread of the week in favor of the Bills. I think this is actually one of the largest spreads of the entire year at 14.5 points. So expect a big day from James Cook. Ray Davis could even get some opportunities. So, we're going to start James Cook with some confidence. I wouldn't start Ray Davis in my traditional leagues, but maybe in a DFS format if you want to look that way. And then on the opposite side of the ball, look, Ramondre Stevenson, he's a volume play. That's what he's been all year. If he scores a touchdown, you're happy with it. If not, he's giving you like a 7 to 10 point floor. It's definitely not exciting. And I know the Bills are a top 10 matchup, but the reality is if these Patriots get down early, I don't think they're going to be able to establish the run. So that's slightly concerning to me. I have labeled him a spot start. Be cautious unless you're in deeper formats. All right, moving on. We've got Cardinals at Panthers. James Conner's, beautiful playoff schedule continues this week against the Panthers, who are the third best matchup for his running backs. One of my starts of the week last week, who had a 30 bomb versus the Patriots. He's going to continue to dominate throughout the fantasy playoffs, and this is another great matchup for him. Start him with the utmost confidence, my RB10 on the week. And then on the opposite side of the ball, Chuba Hubbard, it wasn't a great game versus Dallas. Things got out of hand pretty quickly, but I do think this is a competitive team. This is a little bit out of the ordinary. He still saw 95% of the snaps, so I wouldn't be too concerned with Chuba Hubbard. Just know he has that 10-point floor, but if he gets a touchdown, he has that 17, 20-point ceiling that you want to kind of infuse into your lineup. Moving on, we've got Lions at Bears. Damn it. I did the same thing when Chris Godwin was out for the year. And in my home league, where I had Chris Godwin, and I'm in the second round of the playoffs now, I just lost David Montgomery. I had the bye week. So if anybody out there like me just lost David Montgomery, right, because Dan Campbell said he's going to have season-ending knee injury, we're going to miss him, right? It's a kumbaya at this point. So if anybody out there like me is going to be missing David Montgomery, let's take a moment of silence here. We miss you, Monty. Thank you for being an incredible fantasy pick, and please cheer us on from the sidelines because we're going to need it. I don't know how to replace you, brother, but here's what I will say. For the Jahmyr Gibbs owners, this is fantastic, all right? Jahmyr Gibbs is probably going to get 20-plus touches per game. We know how dynamic and explosive he is and one of the best offenses in the NFL. Jahmyr Gibbs could finish the playoffs with the most points of any fantasy running back. Like, genuinely, from week 15 onwards, he might have the most points. He might average the most points. That's how good he is. It's a top 10 matchup for running backs as well. And then on the opposite side, you have a name like DeAndre Swift, who was on our bust list last week. He does score under 10 points last week. Now he has another bad matchup against the Lions. It's the second worst matchup for your running back. We begged our entire viewership to sell DeAndre Swift around week 11, week 10, before these bad matchups kind of came up on the schedule. I hope you were able to do that because it's not looking very good for him. I would not start him in 90% of leagues. All right, moving on to Titans at Colts. Two teams that are massively underperforming in their own division. It's a 43.5-point over-under. The Colts are favored. I do have Jonathan Taylor labeled as a must start. Not only do I think he wants to redeem himself, I believe, that this team really wants to help him do that. this is a tough thing to live with mentally. When you drop that touchdown, it was stupid. Let's agree. It was stupid. It was dumb. But that's a tough thing for him to live on with as well. I think they want to kind of wipe the slate clean for him. I do think he gets into the end zone this week. That's more of a feeling. I can't really project that. But what I will say is it's a top 12 matchup for running backs. The Colts are favored, indicating they should be able to establish the run. But of course, we know with Anthony Richardson, the man can't complete a pass for 1 yard at the moment. It's frustrating to watch, so anything's possible. But I do like JT, especially given all the injuries that have happened this week. On the opposite side of the ball, Tony Pollard is, a startable name. Last week, he had 17 touches, a touchdown, and he finished with 8.5 points. It's tough to see, but it is a good matchup, right? The Colts are a top 4 matchup for your running back, but I would monitor his progress throughout the week. If he's not practicing throughout the week and he just kind of plays last minute, I would start to limit my expectations and I might look at alternate options. But, as of right now, I'm assuming he's going to practice and be ready to play. Ninth game we'll look at here is the Rams at the Jets. 47.5 point over under, the third highest over under of the week. The Rams are favored by about 3 points, so it is a close spread. For Kyren Williams, you're going to continue to put him out there. He's been so good this year, the RB8 in fantasy football. Still dominating opportunities, still dominating volume and snap share. Last week, he had 31 total touches. We're going to continue to put him into our lineups. And on the opposite side of the ball, I really don't know what to tell you about Breece Hall. He was a decent start last week in a very good matchup against the Jags, but he only managed a measly 30 rushing yards and 3.3 yards per carry. Now he faces the Rams, who are a better defensive line than people give them credit for. I don't know, man. I'm a little bit hesitant. I'd say 90% of people have a better start this week than Breece Hall, especially with your entire fantasy hopes on the line. He only played 48% of the snaps. I mean, Isaiah Davis is out there a bunch. He played 41% of the snaps. Isaiah Davis might outscore Breece Hall. It's a possibility, right? I don't think it would happen, but it's just scary. I would really be cautious starting Breece Hall this week. All right, the 10th matchup we'll look at here is the Eagles at the Commanders. As a Commanders fan, very excited for this one. I'm hoping, we have a much better performance from Jaden Daniels and this entire offense from Cliff Kingsbury. Hopefully he makes some adjustments. But here's what I'll say. Of course, you're going to start Saquon Barkley. According to Zach Berman, he said Saquon Barkley said this on his injury. It's nothing crazy, a little minor, just getting ready for next week. So that's a great sign. Saquon Barkley himself already telling us, hey, pretty much I'll be good to go. Don't worry about me. You can still rely on me. That's how I read it, at least. On the opposite side of the ball, Brian Robinson, I do not trust him in this matchup. If you have a better option, definitely look that way. The Eagles are one of the most difficult rushing defenses against running backs. 5th worst matchup for your running back. Last time he faced Philadelphia, he had a touchdown. He had 14 points. But if you take away that touchdown, which is very difficult to predict on a week-to-week basis, that's like an 8-point game. I think that's a possibility. I think it's a very high chance that he has under 10 points in a very difficult matchup. So just be very cautious. Yes, he's a starting running back on a good offense, so you can play him. But again, limit your expectations. All right, the 11th matchup we will look at here is the Browns at the Bengals. This is the highest over-under of the week, almost 50 points. A lot of that going to the Bengals side. And I think Vegas is assuming that Jameis Winston will start. At the moment, we don't know that. We don't know if it's going to be Jameis. We don't know if it's going to be, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, but we will have to wait and see on that. Here's what I'll say. The Bengals are a middle-of-the-pack matchup for your running backs. Nick Chubb, let's give another moment of silence for another lost brethren. I'd like to say thank you, Nick Chubb, but you really didn't do anything for anyone in fantasy football this year. But I appreciate you as a player and everything you've done for the community over the years. I'm sorry your season ended this way, with that broken foot. But it's over. But if you have Jerome Ford, there's possibility for him to be a decent, desperation spot start. It's a middle-of-the-pack matchup against the Bengals. He is a decent pass-catching running back, so they'll use him in that fashion. But if Dorian Thompson-Robinson is playing, I just have no interest. And then on the opposite side of the ball, like we've been saying for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks since Zach Moss went out, Chase Brown is a must start. He's the definition of it. He's the definition of a league winner. All right, moving on to the 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time slate of games. We've got Vikings, Seahawks, 42.5 point over under. The Vikings are favored by 3.5 points. Technically, the Vikings still have a shot at the number 1 seed, so that will be interesting to watch. Aaron Jones is going to remain a must start for me. Got into the end zone last week versus Chicago, over 18 points. It was great to see, almost 5 yards per carry. That boy dominates the Chicago Bears. We're going to continue to ride him into the playoffs against the Seahawks, who might not have Geno Smith, and that might hurt their offense, which would lead to Aaron Jones potentially having more opportunities at the end of the game. And then on the opposite side, the Seahawks, if Ken Walker plays, I do believe he will be their starter. Okay. I don't believe, all right. So friendly reminder, in weeks 2 and 3, Zach Charbonnet dominated. He looked fantastic. He was great for fantasy. He was great for this team when Ken Walker was out. But when Ken Walker came back in, they gave everything to Ken Walker again. They made him their alpha workhorse guy. I project that to happen again. I love Zach Charbonnet, but if Ken Walker comes back, I don't think you can start Charbs. But if Walker is ruled out, of course, I do think Charbonnet is a startable name purely based off of the volume and opportunities that he should see. He's had 4 games as a starter this year. He hasn't busted in any single one of those games. And he's averaging almost over 18 points per game in those opportunities as well. It is a terrible matchup. I will say that. I will recognize that. This is, I think, the 3rd worst matchup for your running back. Yes, it is the 3rd worst matchup for your running back. So lower expectations, but with the amount of opportunity share he would see, I think he's a fine floor play. Moving on to the Jags at the Raiders. Another graphic that will pop up here that looks messy. All right. I don't trust any of these Jaguar running backs. I don't trust Etienne, who looked pretty good last week and dominated opportunities. I don't trust Tank Bigsby because depending on game script, he could be the guy. I don't trust it. Last week Etienne dominated, but what happens if they dominate the Raiders? Will they give Bigsby more opportunities? It's too messy. I'm not going to bet on that with my entire fantasy championship, on the line, or at least a shot at the fantasy championship. On the opposite side of the ball, I was actually getting really excited to potentially label Sincere McCormick a real legit startable name, but unfortunately he left Monday Night Football with an ankle injury and he did not return, so I do not project him to play this week. If he does, he's a spot start because the matchup is about as good as it gets. But if he's out, I think Amir Abdullah would be the play. Amir Abdullah would become, this spot start, another one of these kind of like break glass type of options. I can tell you on Monday Night Football, he had 19 points, but keep in mind, all that came through the air. He only had 3 carries on the ground for 8 yards, so it's a bit difficult to rely on a week-to-week basis, but he would be the, break glass kind of option there. All right, 14th matchup we'll look at here is the 49ers at the Dolphins. 46.5 point over-under. You got 2 franchises here that had high expectations who have drastically fell short of them. And you also have 2 running backs that I believe are clear must-starts. Isaac Orendo, all right, he came back last week with, a short week on that injury, and he had 20 total touches. I said this the week before, but Shanahan does this, guys. He wants one running back that he features. He did it with CMC, obviously. He did it with Elijah Mitchell the years before. He did it with, what's the guy who just got injured? Sorry, Jordan Mason, right? And he's going to do it with Isaac Orendo. Now he faces the Dolphins. It's the middle of the pack matchup, but it's a good offense to be a part of. I do think Isaac Orendo, with all the injuries we've occurred, I think he's a really good start. On the opposite side of the ball, of course, I'm going to tell you to start Devon Achane. There's literally no reason not to start Devon Achane. I mean, Devon Achane is going to have more just receiving fantasy points than most receivers in fantasy this year. It's ridiculous the way that they're using him through the air. All right, moving on. We've got Sunday Night Football, gang. Bucs at Cowboys. This would have been such a fun one with Dak healthy, but even with Dak out, I still think this is a game that's, is going to decide a lot of fantasy playoffs for people. It's a high over-under, 48.5 points. The Bucs are favored even though it's at Dallas. Cooper Rush has been playing well, so we should see a competitive game. Bucky Irving is going to be a must-start for me. He was a little bit limited last week. They were up for most of the game, so they didn't really need to play him, but he still had 17 touches, still averaged almost 8 yards per carry. We're going to continue to ride with Bucky Irving in our lineups. And then Rachaad White isn't a bad spot start either. If you need a desperation play, I think he's a fine play. This offense definitely funnels through the running backs, so you can put him out there and expect, anywhere from 8 to 15 points. And then on the opposite side of the ball, I am going to label Rico Dowdle a must start. Guys, I want you to just listen to this for a second, all right? This is the last 4 weeks. This is the last 4 weeks for Rico Dowdle and his rushing yardage total. All right, week 12, 86 yards. Week 13, 112. Week 14, 131. Week 15, 149. The man is running all over these defenses. He's looking fantastic. He's averaging well over 5.5 yards per carry in that span. He's been fantastic. We're going to continue to ride him. In the past 3 games, he's had 22 attempts, 112 yards and a touchdown, 18 attempts, 25 attempts. The guy has been, incredibly good. He's the first undrafted player with 3 consecutive 100-plus rushing yard games since Arian Foster. It's great to see you can rely on him. And the last game of the week is Monday Night Football. All right, so we've got Saints at Packers, 42.5 point over-under, the second largest spread of the week, and the Packers are favored by almost 2 tutties. So not looking good for the Saints in this one. In fact, if the Packers defense special teams is still out there, they're a great play this week in my opinion. But Alvin Kamara will have to monitor this throughout the week. Their head coach says that he's dealing with a growing abductor type of situation. He's going to undergo further testing. You might know more by the time you're watching this. I don't project him to play. If I'm being honest with you, I do not expect him to play. I know it says must start on your screen, but I don't think he plays. And if he doesn't, Kendre Miller will become a spot start. We did see Kendre Miller one time in his career be a starter for the Saints. That was week 18 last year. Okay, he had 73 rushing yards, over 5.5 yards per carry and a touchdown. So there are worse options out there. He's another one of these break glass type of scenarios, but I would not really be betting on, these guys if you have better options. Of course, if Kamara plays, you can play him, right? And then on the opposite side of the ball, Josh Jacobs, who's on a damn spree right now. This man cannot be stopped, rumbling, tumbling all the way to a league-winning finish this year. Since week 7, he has had one single game under 20 PPR points. The man's been a monster. He has multiple games with 3 touchdowns in the last 5 weeks. He's been so dominant, and he has the Saints, which are the second best matchup for your running back. I mean, this guy, if you're facing him, good luck, because he's probably going to go out there and put up massive points this week again. I appreciate y'all for watching the video. Do me a favor, hit that like button to show some love. Subscribe if you like the content. And if you have a question that you want to ask me on, at any point, check out the pinned comment. You can reach me at any time on our website. And while you're over there, if you haven't created a free account yet, you can get one for free with the promo code LAND. When you use our free promo code LAND, you get the expert consensus rankings over there. So definitely go check that out. And what I will say, guys, is this is our last week making videos. We will not make videos in week 17. Why? Because we'll be with our family. All right, it's a holiday week. We take 2 weeks off of the year, and this just happens to be the 2 weeks off of the year. So if you do want to reach us during week 17, we will still be replying to the website questions. So check out the pinned comment, but good luck. You got this. We've been through it all together this year. Go get that championship. I'll see you guys in the wide receiver video coming out very soon. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.